What's going on, Vikings fans? First off, happy Valentine's Day to all of you guys. But coming up on today's show, I want to go over how the Minnesota Vikings can get up to $96 million for 2025 NFL free agency. And as it stands right now, the Vikings do have $58 million. We're going to go over some cut candidates, some restructures, and also make some decisions on our own free agents here and just make a couple of moves where the Vikings could get up to $96 million in free agency. And they got a lot of guys that could possibly get cut from this team. You know, we're going to talk about a Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram, and then also some restructure candidates as Jonathan Greenard, Brian O'Neill, and TJ Hockenson. And also make some decisions on some key free agents out there, Drew Dahlman, Byron Murphy Jr., and Cameron Bynum. But before we do so, if you guys want the Vikings to go big in free agency and go all in on this next 2 to 3 year window with J.J. McCarthy still on his rookie contract, just go down there, hit that thumbs up icon, like today's show. I put the goal as 500 likes. If you guys can help me blow that out of the water, I would greatly appreciate it. It makes me look good for my bosses as well. So go down there and hit that thumbs up button. All right, let's start off here with some cut candidates for the Minnesota Vikings. So the obvious one here is going to be Brian Asamoah. Now, he is just a rotational linebacker, a good special teams player, but the Vikings can save $1.43 million, and I think they would choose to do so. And then also our good old friend here, Ed Ingram at the right guard spot. They do save $3 million if they cut him. And then Garrett Bradbury. We'll give you guys more thoughts on Bradbury here in a second, but they would actually save $5.2 million if they decide to cut him. So let's just say the Vikings make all these cuts. Well, it gets adofo-mensah to already $67.63 million in cap space. But I do think the biggest, decision on a cut candidate is no doubt Garrett Bradbury. Because Garrett Bradbury, he has not been good for the Minnesota Vikings. He has not been living up to that first-round pick stature that when we drafted him coming out of college. And if the Vikings do decide to cut Bradbury, center almost becomes the biggest position of need for the Minnesota Vikings because you don't have a young guy that you're hoping that can step in and play good football. So you would probably need to target center very, very hard in free agency if you do decide to let Garrett Bradbury go. But more on Bradbury here. His PFF grades from this past season, he was pretty bad. Overall grade, 62.1. That was actually the 33rd rated center according to PFF in total of 64 eligible centers. Pass block grade, we know that is his weak link in part of his game, 48.2. Grade 55th overall, but run block solid at 70.7, which is 14th in the entire National Football League. But Bradbury has not lived up to being that first-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings, and he's actually started to regress over the past couple of years. Here are his career PFF grades. Now, he actually played in the most amount of snaps that he's ever played in this past season. But, that rookie year started off slow. Then he saw some jump in 2020, no jump in 2021. But then in 2022, he was pretty solid. But then since then, it has been downhill. And if you guys see the pass blocking grades on the far right side of your screen right now, interior pressure has always been the issue for the Minnesota Vikings. And it starts at that center position with Garrett Bradbury. So could you want a new center to help J.J. McCarthy, start this new era of Vikings football? We got three options here. And, the big name, the big fish on the center free agent market is Drew Dahlman, no doubt about it. 26 years old, entering the prime of his NFL career. Then you also got a guy like Ryan Kelly. You guys know I love those interior Colts offensive linemen, whether it's Kelly or Will Fries. And you also have a guy very similar to Garrett Bradbury, Coleman Shelton, the Bears center. Now, Coleman Shelton, he is, why he's very similar to Bradbury is he's maybe not as bad as, people make him out to be, but when he gets beat pretty bad. But the main guy that we're going to talk about here is Drew Dahlman. Now, his contract projection, according to PFF, is a 4-year, $46 million deal. And he'll get $27.5 million in guaranteed money. So you have an out after year 3 in this contract. But again, if the Vikings are going to decide to cut Bradbury, you have to pay extra for a center. And I wonder if a team or a guy like Drew Dahlman, where this contract projection almost might be undervaluing what he could get on an open market, considering there are not a lot of good center free agents after Dahlman and Ryan Kelly. Now, I will say the center draft in the NFL draft is actually a lot deeper than most people think. But I think it makes this decision on Bradbury very challenging because if you decide to cut him, you're going to have to pay a center in free agency, or you're going to have to use one of those 4 draft picks to draft a center. Probably want to make a center draft pick if you cut Bradbury, one of the first 2 picks in the draft. So I'll ask you guys this. Should the Vikings cut Garrett Bradbury? Give me a C for cut or give me a Give me a K for keep down below in the comment section. You guys let me know your thoughts down below. Now, coming up here in a second, we're going to talk about restructuring these three guys. Right tackle Brian O'Neill, edge rusher Jonathan Greenard, and tight end TJ Hockenson. Each three of these guys would save the Vikings a whole lot of cap space for 2025 free agency. So we'll get you guys the information there. And then where can the Vikings use that extra cap space here in free agency? But before we do so, I want to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys had the Factor Meals.com/VikingsChat50 off and plug in that promo code VikingsChat50 off, you guys will get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Now, if you guys are ready to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes so you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, and it is perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Here covering the Minnesota Vikings at Chat Sports, we have a lot of long days here. When I get off work and I go hit the gym and then I come back, sometimes I don't always feel like making a home-cooked meal, and that's where Factor came in and has completely changed my life. I love their chicken Alfredo pasta you guys see on screen right now. It is absolutely delicious. So if you guys want to, add Factor to your lifestyle, eat smart with Factor and get started at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and use code VikingsChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code VikingsChat50 off at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. So I do want to get you guys just the information on how restructuring works because, listen, before I was doing this video, I was even a little confused on how you can restructure these deals. But pretty much it converts a portion of base salary into a signing bonus, freeing up cap space while pushing a larger cap hit into the future years of a contract. Now, famously, or I guess infamously, this is what the New Orleans Saints have been doing for the last 4 seasons. And now they're in cap space hell, but they kept on pushing kind of the credit card down the line here. And I think the Vikings could do this with a couple of key guys. And we're going to start off with Jonathan Greenard here. So if the Vikings do decide to restructure Greenard, they would save $13.85 million this season, which would get the Vikings total cap space up to $81.48 million. But it would lower his cap hit to $8.45, so that would push that extra cap hit into future years, but it does allow the Vikings to go bigger this year in free agency. And I think it does make a lot of sense for the Vikings to restructure Greenard because I expect him to be a big piece of the Minnesota Vikings for the next couple of years. I was saying before the season, I don't really feel like the Vikings have a blue chipper defensively. I was completely wrong on that. Greenard is the definition of a blue chipper. He will be a 12-plus sack a game guy for the next 3 to 4 seasons. He's in the prime of his career, so I think it makes a lot of sense for the Vikings just say, hey, Greenard, we're going to restructure your contract. You get a little bump in your signing bonus, but it would just move that cap number down the line for a couple of years. So that's the first move. You restructure Jonathan Greenard, and then you restructure, how about this guy, Brian O'Neill. So Brian O'Neill has a $26 million cap hit for this season. And if you restructure Brian O'Neill, it would save you $8.12 million, and the cap hit would be $17.9 million for this season. And then the Vikings would actually get to, after all these restructures, to $96.97 million in free agency. So that's a boatload of money to spend this season. But the only question and something you have to consider on Brian O'Neill, let's just say the Vikings don't view O'Neill as a long-term play at the right tackle position. If they want to cut O'Neill next season, first off, you can't restructure him because that would just add way too much dead cap for the 2026 season. But if you decided to cut him, you would actually save $19 million next year. So I'm sure that's something Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, this whole Vikings brass, is thinking about in terms of if deciding to restructure Brian O'Neill is, hey, is he a long-term player for this organization? I'm going to lean towards yes, considering he is coming off an absolute monster year for the purple and gold. I would restructure him. He'll be on this team, I'm assuming, for at least the next 3 to 4 years. And then if you just get the next season, you can just extend him and continuously pushing that back and really taking advantage of J.J. McCarthy on this rookie deal. But another guy we're going to talk about, TJ Hockenson. So you would save $7.37 million this season, and it does get your final cap space up to $96.97 million, and it lowers his cap hit to $9.27. Now, I think TJ Hockenson, no doubt, is a very, very good tight end in the National Football League. Is he great? To be determined. Now, he was coming off the torn ACL this past season. I think that definitely affected his play and just affected his confidence, and especially in that Lions game, Week 18, he had a ton of 50-50 balls, and he wasn't coming down with them. And I know all of us love to, kind of pile on Sam Darnold, but it's not like Hawk was helping him out whatsoever. But if the Vikings view the next 3 years as their true Super Bowl window with J.J. McCarthy. And if you've been kind of following the Vikings master plan over the last 2 seasons, I think that's what they view these next 3 years as their best chance to go win a Super Bowl if J.J. McCarthy ends up working out. Then they should restructure all of these deals. You should go all in this year on free agency. Go shore up that interior offensive line. Go sign some big-name defensive linemen, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I think at the Vikings, you view these next 3 seasons as your Super Bowl window. Go restructure these 3 guys. But now we got to make some decisions here on the top Vikings free agents. And we're just going to focus in on 2 of these guys, both in the secondary, one being Cameron Bynum and the other one being Byron Murphy Jr., as these are the biggest names at the free agent spot for the Minnesota Vikings. You also got other guys like Jihad Ward and other guys that will probably only get like 1 year, $3-4 million deal. But let's start off Byron Murphy here. So I think the Vikings should re-sign him. I think this is a must. I think this is the biggest domino in terms of Vikings plans in free agency. And if you re-sign him for a 3-year, $52 million deal, we're going to assume that he's going to be in a cap hit for $14 million this season, which would bring down the Vikings cap total for 2025 at $82.67 million. But even if you go re-sign Murphy, you will still have over $80 million to spend if you make all of these moves. Now we got to make a decision on Cameron Bynum. And I've been saying this for a couple weeks now, and I hate saying, oh, we need to let Cam Bynum go, but I just think it's the right move for the Minnesota Vikings. And especially after watching the Philadelphia Eagles just dominate in the trenches for the last 4 months of the NFL season, I want them to allocate more funds to the trenches and not pay players who are farther away from the football, considering if Bynum's going to get $12 million a year, do you want to pay a safety that much? And you have Theo Jackson waiting in the reins, which I think he could step in and give you damn near the same production that Cam Bynum did this past season on a way cheaper deal. So as it stands right now, Vikings, $82 million to spend in cap space. Well, where could that go? So here are my 5 dream free agent signings for the Minnesota Vikings. The 3 big dogs you're going to bring in. Number 1 being Drew Dahlman. We're going to sign him for a 4-year, $46 million deal. The second one being Mekhi Becton, guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, 3 years, $27 million. Was an offensive tackle for the Jets, but bumped inside this season and was awesome. And then my number 1 free agent, dream free agent signing for the Vikes, Milton Williams. We're going to sign him for a 3-year, $63 million contract. Kevin Zeitler, plug-and-play offensive guard, 1 year, $6.25 million. And then we are going to get some insurance at the safety spot. I'm cool with them paying a veteran like a Justin Simmons, 1 year, $6 million, extremely versatile safety, would be a great scheme fit with what Brian Flores likes to do. But you got 2 Falcons, 2 Eagles, and a Lions on that list. And then if you make all those moves, you would still have $33 million to spend. You got to probably give around $10 to $12 million for the draft class. You also got to re-sign. Like, what are you going to do with Daniel Jones? He'll probably be around $8 to $9 million on this year's cap. Also got guys like Jihad Ward, Jonathan Bullard, these other guys. So I think the Vikings do have an avenue where they could spend massive in free agency, but you got to make some tough decisions on guys like Garrett Bradbury, Cameron Bynum. I think you just let those guys walk, and then you go all in on Drew Dahlman, Milton Williams, Mekhi Becton, and you really shore up the trenches here in free agency for the Minnesota Vikings. But if you guys made it to the end of today's show, just give me a SKOL down below in the comments section. Appreciate you guys watching, and also happy Valentine's Day to all of you guys. Fun show today. Just want to go through that little experiment on how the Vikings can get up to almost $100 million in cap space if they make a couple of moves before free agency starts. But also, I'm on Twitter. Hit me up over there at Pat Siepman is the Twitter handle. If you guys give me a follow, I'll give you guys a follow right back. But we'll see you guys next time. As always, SKOL Vikes.